Mosaic Theater presents Precarious, a sharp new comedy about motherhood, retirement, and the climate crisis. It's one family and a whole lot of messy. Starring the acclaimed Kim Schrath and Helen Hayes Award winner Zoe Walpole, this is a story about starting out, starting over, and the love that holds it all together. See Precarious June 4th through June 28th at the Atlas Performing Arts Center. Get your tickets now at mosaictheater.org.
Today on CityCast DC, for more than 50 years, the Combined Federal Campaign has been part of DC life. It's the world's biggest workplace charity. It lets government employees steer money straight from their own paychecks to their chosen charities. And it's especially important to charities here because so many feds live here. But the campaign is now on life support. It's threatened with termination by the Trump administration. Why would they target a beloved institution like this? Drew Friedman from the Federal News Network has been covering the story, and according to her, it is a lot more complicated than it looks. Today is Thursday, June 4th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Drew, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
So listen, if you're in the metro and elsewhere around the holidays, you often see these signs representing various charities and good causes, and it'll say at the bottom, we're number 456 on your Combined Federal Campaign form, which is to say encouraging people to donate. This program has sort of always been there in DC, but now maybe it won't be. What is going on with this? What's with the spate of news?
Well, this really started in about the summer of 2025 when it seemed like the Trump administration was taking a closer look at the CFC. This has been around since the 1960s in the Kennedy administration. But in 2025, what happened was about in August, the White House put a temporary hold on the CFC, and there at the time was not really a clear reason why. In September, the Office of Personnel Management, which is the agency that manages and runs this program, ultimately decided to continue the CFC for the 2025 season. The OPM director at the time said that it would continue only because many charities had already spent time and money preparing for it over the course of the year, but they have expressed concerns about the longevity of the program and its ability to continue into the future. There has not been a decision made this year for the 2026 campaign. Not a lot of action, but there have been at least a couple of steps or signs that seem to be pointing to the Trump administration at least having interest in potentially shutting down the CFC altogether.
So yeah, when you go to the website, there's this ominous language about this site may be shut down at any minute. Can you just explain for people who don't know, what is the CFC? Why is it such a big deal?
Well, again, this is something that has been around for a very long time, about 60 years or so. And the idea, when it was created at least, was allowing federal employees or government workers to a path or an easier way to contribute to a number of charities around the world. Over time, the program has grown, and it currently has somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 participating charities. They've raised close to $9 billion since the program was founded. And, the charities that participate in the CFC, they have a whole range of, advocacy areas. They do support for disaster relief, humanitarian aid, conservation or environmental concerns, support for veterans, educational access, a whole range of things that federal employees can choose to do direct payroll deductions or other options for contributing to those charities through the CFC program.
So this is, this does not spend any tax money. It's basically you work for the feds, and there's 3 million people who work for the federal government. You can select quite easily through this interface a charity to give some portion of your own paycheck to. And the charities like it because it's much more efficient than them having to go tin cup around to you and individually find you at your house or whatever to solicit the donation. This is giving to charity, volunteering, giving charity are things that I don't think there's any political divide over them. I mean, it's not like it's not socialism. It's people giving money. What is the administration's problem with this?
Well, they actually have a pretty interesting take on this whole situation, and this stretches back for a number of years. So basically, their concerns come down to the costs and the administrative costs of keeping the program up and running. There has also been very steadily declining participation in the amount of donations that federal employees are giving each year. So with those two things combined, the Trump administration and OPM as an extension of that are concerned that what the program looked like in the 1960s through maybe the 1980s isn't really reflective of how federal employees give or donate today. They say, of course, they're not against charities or giving donations. I don't think that anyone would really be against that. But they say that there's other options now and other ways to, give money without such high overhead costs.
So just so I understand how it works, if I'm a federal employee, I get a form, or I guess it's probably on digital now, where I can select with like a couple of clicks of the mouse $20 from every paycheck and give it to, the soup kitchen. Who is paying these overhead costs? And are they indeed I know there's best practices within the philanthropic world. Are they indeed high?
They have changed over time, and I can give kind of a historical look at how much those overhead costs are, and it has changed over time too in terms of who is paying those costs. So if we look back to 2014, that's when OPM had issued new regulations and a new way to essentially run the CFC program each year. It was at that time that they began requiring charities who wanted to participate in the CFC to pay fees to help cover what OPM saw at the time as rising administrative costs to run the program. Mm-hmm. At the time, it was about 10% of donations from federal employees that was going towards these administrative costs to just run the CFC program overall. So what they started doing around the mid-2010s was starting to charge nonprofit organizations an application fee that was non-refundable to participate in the program. And then if they were approved for the CFC, they would have to pay a second listing fee to be listed in the CFC program. So the idea was to use the charities and nonprofits payments to help cover the cost of overhead and these rising administrative costs. Over time, it didn't really work that well. OPM reported in 2025 that administrative costs have essentially more than doubled, and it would take about $22 million in fees to be able to administer the program. So it's essentially the charities are still paying money, and there's still these overhead costs. And at the same time that's going on, fewer and fewer federal employees are donating each year.
District Bridges is making it happen on U Street this summer. Join the 4th annual Juneteenth at Harrison, June 18th from 3 to 9 p.m. at Harrison Park. Come celebrate freedom, culture, and community with live go-go music, DJs, local art, youth activities, and family-friendly programming honoring the legacy of Black Broadway right here in the heart of Washington, D.C. Can't make it? I got you, because District Bridges is connecting communities across D.C. all year round through programs, events, and local initiatives that bring people together. Join your neighborhood's cleanup crew or volunteer at an event like Cleveland Park Day on June 7th. To learn more about the Juneteenth celebration and all the great stuff that District Bridges has going on, go to districtbridges.org. That's districtbridges.org.
Here's something from our sponsors at the DC Department of Behavioral Health. Let me give you a number that matters, 33%. That's how much fatal opioid overdoses dropped in DC from 2023 to 2024. And the DC Department of Behavioral Health is connecting people to prevention, treatment, and recovery every single day. But the work isn't done. Whether you're looking for help, looking for answers, or looking out for someone you love, don't wait. Know your worth, know your alternatives, know your value, know yourself. Resources are available right now at knowyourpathdc.com. Hey there, it's Mike, one of our sponsors. Today is DC's Board of Elections, who want DC voters to know the primary and special elections are coming up on June 16th. And for the first time, we're using ranked choice voting, or RCV. You can now rank up to 5 candidates on your ballot. If your first choice candidate doesn't make it, your vote moves to your second choice and continues to your next choice until there's a winner. Just remember, do not give multiple candidates the same ranking, do not rank a candidate more than once, and do not skip rankings. You can vote by drop box, during early voting, by mail, or on Election Day. Have questions about the elections or RCV? Contact the DC Board of Elections at 202-727-2525 or visit dcboe.org. DC, get ready to rank your vote. So I've got 2 questions. I'm fascinated with the fewer and fewer donating, but this is always referred to as the biggest employee charity program in the world, which is no surprise because this is a very, very, very big employer. But I presume a lot of other employers have similar charity programs. Is there any sense of the overhead costs by comparison in other big employee charities?
The one that I can give as a comparison, and this is one that the OPM director actually cited in their concerns, was looking at donor advised funds, or DAFs. Mm-hmm. Those usually have about 1% administrative or overhead fees compared with 10+% that we're seeing in the government. So there are arguments that maybe some others do have similar administrative costs, but there are options too that have lower costs.
And then this question of people giving less and less. I can imagine the last couple of years when there's been so much uncertainty about am I going to even have a job anymore? That's probably not putting in a lot of people in a mood of like giving away money. But I take it from what you're saying that the decline in giving predated that. Does it reflect a broader decline in the general population? And if so, or even if not, to what do people attribute that?
It's an interesting question because it could be a couple of different things, and it's not entirely clear why the participation has gone down so much. But just for context or comparison, if you look to 2009, that's when there was the highest. That was the highest year ever of donations to the CFC.
A year when the economy was plummeting.
Right, and at that time it was $282 million in donations during that year. In 2025, it was $40 million.
Wait, what?
Yes. So part of the reason it may have gone down so much since that time is, well, in 2025, this overlapped with the government shutdown. So a lot of federal employees may have been not wanting to donate just because they were uncertain about their own paychecks.
Well, what about like 2 years before that, like 23 or something?
2024 was $65 million. Around that early 2020s, you had maybe like 90 million or 80 million. So it's much farther down.
That's a huge fall off. Wow.
Yes. So the other reason that this could be attributed to and why it's declined so much is because those same changes that when OPM made the structural changes to the CFC in terms of adding the fees to have nonprofits participate, they made some other changes to the program by moving it entirely online, and then some other structural changes, which after those regulations were put in place and under that new structure, donations dropped between 2016 and 2017, 40%.
Holy.
So it's come into the picture more recently because the Trump administration has been, talking about this more and actually considering shutting the whole thing down. But these concerns over the administrative costs and over just the participation in the program, they stretch much longer than just the past year or two.
There's 3 million-ish federal employees, and we know that most of them are not in D.C. And obviously the charities that you can send your CFC contributions to are all over the world. But it's been a particularly big deal here because such a high percentage of local workers are feds, and therefore DC serving charitable organizations are particularly reliant on CFC money. Did you get any sense of sort of where they're at in their thinking?
That's the other part of the problem with this too, is of course these charities who do rely on CFC donations, especially a lot of these smaller organizations, they rely very heavily on CFC funding. Even if it has declined over time, it's still very significant to a lot of these organizations to have that reliable and continuous year over year fund that's coming from the federal workforce. And it's something that's caught the attention of Congress recently, too. There was a letter from local DMV Democrats writing to the OPM director and, just raising a lot of concerns about how shuttering the CFC program, which is not certain but seems to be an option on the table here, that would cause a significant loss of resources to a lot of charities, both locally and around the globe.
So we're literally talking about the soup kitchen in your neighborhood.
Right. There are participating charities. For example, the Maryland Food Bank is, they are a big supplier for a lot of soup kitchens and other homeless shelters and things like that. And they are an organization that has expressed concerns about the shuttering of the CFC, and they do receive funding through that program. So, it is something that is that has a local effect for sure.
So that letter that you referenced from members of Congress, it was signed, I think it was organized by, and the top signature was Jamie Raskin. Does it engage at all with the criticism about the overhead and with the issue of declining participation?
It does. So the letter does talk about that. They argue that the program, they kind of push back against this sentiment that there's these high fees and, the declining participation by saying that, the government has essentially saved $400 million in the last 5 years by having these donations that they say might have otherwise required taxpayer funding. The language is a little bit vague there, but they believe that there are some cost savings here for taxpayers and for the government as well. And I think they do, allude to this idea that there is potential opportunity to increase the efficiency of the CFC. They encouraged OPM to, if there are different revisions or changes that they could make to the program, then sure, they would be on board with that. But they just don't think the answer is to completely disband and shut down the CFC completely.
So this obviously doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? And in the last year and a half, we've seen mass firings of federal workers. Russ Vought, who's sort of the architect of a lot of the changes in the federal workforce, has talked about wanting to have a traumatic effect on federal workers. We know that companies that organize workplace giving, maybe they're doing it because it's a nice thing to do, but they also know that it is the kind of thing that winds up making people bonded more to their job, feeling better about their job. So when something like this happens, that in an administration that it has talked publicly about making people feel worse about their jobs, I assume a lot of people are not taking at face value the claim that this is all about efficiency.
I think that's a fair statement. If you look at this in the broader context, of course, there's other ways that the Trump administration has been overhauling, for lack of a better word, the federal workforce policy, and that's having a major effect on federal employee morale. Lots say that their productivity is down. There's been a number of other changes that it's almost hard to keep track of everything that's been going on, but this is certainly one part of a broader puzzle. And whether it's a question of something to push back against federal employees or change things for them in their day-to-day work and how they feel, versus a simple change for efficiency and for cost savings, which is a stated goal of DOGE and the Trump administration as well. Not really clear, but I do think that there is probably some underlying concerns there from employees.
So it is now May when we're talking. The big donation season is sort of Thanksgiving, Christmas time. What do we expect will happen between now and then, or when will we know the fate of this?
It's hard to say. I do know that charities and the nonprofits who participate in the CFC, all that sort of preparation work, like the marketing and trying to prepare for the upcoming giving season usually starts in the summer. So maybe around July or August is when we might start seeing some action from OPM or the Trump administration if they are planning to shut this down. As you mentioned, the online CFC donation portal, it says that it is being decommissioned, and there hasn't really been any action to indicate that it will continue this year. They say no final decision has been made, but I'd imagine that in the next month or two, we might see something come out on this.
Drew, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.